The Goa'uld are one of the most important and iconic factions of the Stargate franchise, including their Egyptian space-themed aesthetic. The Goa'uld, or the Goa'uld Empire, were one of the most dominant and powerful factions in the galaxy for a few thousand years, being a ruthless empire with anyone who stood in their way, even their own kind. Here we will see the origin and history, as well as their end, in addition to their culture, form of government, technology and legacy to the galaxy. Possibly, for those who did not see the series or the movie, I think more the series, they will think that they are human, but no. Actually, they are this.
Señorita Ronson, por favor.
Not them, but this.
General, continúe.
Yes, parasites. The Goa'uld are actually parasites that come from the planet P3X888 with a somewhat strange life cycle. They come from a queen and, once spawned, survive to adulthood. When they grow their fins and can go outside, they take as a host the native species of the planet called Unas, humanoid or reptilian reptiles. After several generations of taming the species and creating a symbiosis, the parasites themselves could improve the physical state of the host, including their regeneration or recovery. Eventually, they found the planet Stargate and, once they learned how to use it, they began to conquer other planets through control, possession, or parasitism of the dominant species of the worlds they visited. In addition, they acquired, studied, and eventually used the technologies they obtained for their own purposes. During their expansion, they acquired outside technology because they were not very innovative themselves, but preferred to steal it to implement it in their own. During these centuries, the species itself and its host began to die out due to incompatibility and almost abusive use of their hosts, almost coming to an end, until the Supreme System Lord, named Ra, found the planet Earth and the human species in a very primitive age, or as they would call it, Tori. Humanity turned out to be perfect for them compared to other species, including that of their home world, due to a better ability of language expression and use of tools. Also, humans were easier for the parasite to repair and use of their machines to prolong their life. Although the parasite's lifespan was already long, it depended on the host species and increased with the use of technologies, but for them it was not enough. After first contact, the Goa'uld began to bring the Tori into their empire, implementing them in all levels of society, from slaves, soldiers, incubators, and even the system lords themselves began to use the Tori. This allowed humanity to expand and populate the galaxy indirectly. When humans overthrew Ra, although it is not known how it happened, since they were humans in the Egyptian era with weapons from the same era against aliens, with much more advanced weapons and ships, it seems that they had already gotten what they wanted, better hosts, and there was nothing more valuable on Earth. What a surprise they would get in the future, although there were some Goa'uld who stayed, but without their technology, being some of the most important and infamous people in human history. Even so, the Empire grew and spread throughout the galaxy. Coming to the events of the first Stargate and the SG-1 series, the Goa'uld Empire was already well established in the galaxy, although with its small rebel lions, internal disputes, betrayals and other minor details. The most important event was the death of Ra at the hands of the first Tori team, SG-1. With this, the lower system lords began wars over the power grab left by Ra. Being Ra's brother, Apophis was able to regain control, but his primate or right-hand rebelled due to the discontent he generated among his Jaffa brothers, being branded a traitor and subsequently joining SG-1. Over time, and with many difficulties, they managed to overthrow Apophis. When he was traveling with his mothership, he was diverted by an explosion of a nearby star, being expelled from the galaxy itself and sent to a distant one, where he was boarded and infested by the replicators, which caused a crash that destroyed the ship, ending Apophis. With the death of Apophis, the power struggles began again, being more ferocious than before, but from exile appeared Anubis, who returned after quite a while. Now you may wonder, who is Anubis? Well, in the early days of the Goa'uld Empire, the ruler was Atug, who was later killed by Apep, his son. Instead of having all the power, he shared it with his most loyal followers, Ra, Nut and Thuth, who remained in power for quite some time. However, this did not save him when another lord named Anubis killed him to take his place. Ra, with his forces, was able to defeat him and Anubis was exiled for his betrayal. After several millennia of exile, Anubis returned to take the place left by Apophis, much to the reluctance of the other lords, as he brought more advanced technology and knowledge that served him well in taking full control of the empire and eliminating those lesser lords who opposed him. One of the technologies he brought was an Asgardian radiation weapon that was implemented in his mothership, allowing him to destroy planets, or rather, a more effective death ray. He also oversaw the creation of his super soldiers called Goa'uld, equipped with armor that made them indestructible to any attack. These super soldiers were created to replace the Jaffa. Once his power and status was established, Anubis launched a major invasion of Earth, resulting in his downfall and the beginning of the end of the Goa'uld Empire. The SG-1 team, with the help of the rebel Jaffa, found an outpost of ancient drones in Antarctica, which were deployed against Anubis and his forces, and were eradicated. After Anubis' death, there was once again a power vacuum, but this time the remaining lords, instead of fighting to take over the position, agreed to divide up the territories to avoid a civil war, which only lasted a few months. When Baal discovered a way to control the remaining Goa'uld, he used them to defeat the lords and take over their territories. It was later discovered that Baal was still under the command of Anubis, who was not dead, but on a spree. The reality is that Anubis was an ascended Goa'uld, or almost, since in his exile he was able to trick an ascended ancient into ascending him, becoming what the others of his kind boasted of being, a true god, an immortal and powerful being. But all of this was cut short by the arrival of the replicators in the galaxy, whose goal was to assimilate everyone. With a new enemy on the horizon, the Goa'uld and Tori reluctantly joined forces to defeat them, using the superweapon that was on Dakara. With the replicator threat eliminated, Anubis wanted to use the superweapon to eradicate all life in the galaxy, but was stopped by a Medicilla, the Ascended who Anubis had tricked into ascending him. Fed up with Anubis's actions and convinced by Dr. Daniel Jackson that she must do the right thing to stop him and redeem herself, she sacrificed herself by fighting Anubis for all eternity, though it is said that they more than just self-destructed in the process. With the end of the war with the replicators, the death of Anubis and several, if not all, system lords, the Goa'uld Empire was weakened to the point of disappearing, while the free Jaffa were able to create their own government, free of their tyranny. Still, the last system lord, Baal, attempted to rebuild the empire by cloning himself, but another problem came to them and the galaxy, again, the Ori. The arrival of the Ori marked the end of the Goa'uld and also of the new Jaffa government. Baal attempted to obtain the ancient weapon capable of eliminating the Ori, but failed. Later, he attempted to end the invasion when he captured Adria, the leader of the Ori, and used her as a host, but the plan failed when SG-1 intervened and eliminated him. Finally, the last clone of Baal revealed that the original was going to travel back in time using a Stargate portal with a solar flare to change history, but again the plan failed thanks to the SG-1 team. Thus, with the death of all the system lords, the clones, except one who was freed from his parasite, and with the death of the original Baal, the Goa'uld Empire is finished. Here we have to divide it into two parts, the Goa'uld parasites and their hosts. The Goa'uld parasites are sea serpents born from a queen. Once they sprout fins and can be on land, they seek out hosts to inhabit and control. They have the ability to prolong the life of their host, make them immune to disease, and increase their physical strength. This is because once they parasitize the host by connecting to the spine, it becomes harder for them to change bodies, as they lose their fins and become more dependent on the body they possess. When the empire was already established, they began to modify their own species and themselves to prolong their lives, improve their adaptability to body changing, etc. One thing that is not fully explained, I think, is that at one point the Naquadam mineral was part of the biology of the parasites and their hosts. It is not known if they were already in their system before, due to experiments or possibly due to continuous exposure to it, but this never affected them, although it is not entirely true, since the prolongation of the life of the system lords through a machine that cured and rejuvenated them caused certain side effects such as narcissism, arrogance, egolatry and other psychological causes, more than they already had. Something curious is that the Goa'uld do not have gender, that is, they are asexual, but due to the time they spend with their host they usually acquire traits or tastes of these, such as body language, taste for clothing, preference of partners, and when they change bodies they are usually of the same sex as the previous one. The hosts, the Jaffa, are often physically improved to be more compatible with the parasites, better soldiers, hosts of the lords they serve when they want to change bodies or incubators. In some cases, the parasite and the host can reach a symbiosis where both parties get along, and these were the most dangerous, as the parasites themselves hated the system lords and wanted to be free. Also, the queen herself gave birth to these parasites because she was also fed up with them, like Egeria, who created the Tok'ra. I know this part is a bit of a cheat, but it's not cheating, nor is it just a time saver. It's just that all three go hand in hand, and that's partly its greatest strength, but also its greatest weakness. It was a pseudo-feudal or hierarchical society, with the system overlords, Ra, Apophis, and Anubis, at the top, while the system overlords ruled sectors and the lower ones ruled planets. There was also a veneration of themselves, meaning they presented themselves as gods to the subjugated races, especially humans, whom they considered inferior and used as slaves and hosts. The weakness of this is that there used to be a lot of conspiracies, betrayals, and by enslaving so many worlds, rebel lions would occasionally occur. The power vacuum left by one of the higher-ups or the supreme would generate civil wars for power. Something notable and that stands out is the Egyptian style that the entire Goa'uld society presents and that they maintained for thousands of years, being recorded in many worlds, including ours. And here is the Goa'uld alphabet. I will leave this part for a separate video because I want to explore it in more detail, including a certain mod that I want to add, but I will leave it to a vote. Okay? As you may know, being parasites, they do not really have their own technology. I would even say that the Egyptian style might not be theirs and that they took it from some civilization that they liked and then spread it everywhere. Something that should also be noted is their technological stagnation, since by themselves they do not usually investigate or have their own development, but rather depend on external technology from other civilizations or species to advance and grow. Even when acquiring it, that is, stealing it, they do not share these discoveries with each other and, even worse, with their subjects, who were from the Middle Ages or Egypt to possibly the Industrial Revolution. Here they will talk about Naquadah, which was the material most used by them, but in reality it is the raw material for a lot of technology and for many species, including the ancients. The Goa'uld could be considered one of the largest empires in the Milky Way, more than the ancients. Even so, with all that power and dominion, it was not enough to stop their conflicts and internal wars, betrayals, seizure of power, rebel lions, and the emergence of a new faction that put them in check to the point of extinction. Well, there are still wild Goa'uld from their home planet, but not from the Empire anymore. With this I thank you for the support. I know that more things were missing, such as mentioning important Goa'uld or the Tok'ra themselves and other things. I will possibly make more Stargate videos, since it is one of my favorite sci-fi, and I may make more. Until next time.